Senator Lowenthal, Senator Hancock, Senator Huff,
Here.
Assemblymember Fuller,
Here.
Assemblymember Brownlee, Assemblymember Hayashi, Scott Harvey,
Present.
Kathleen Moore,
Here.
Lynn Green,
Here.
Cynthia Bryant.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. If there's no objections, we'll hold the roll open on any of our items for the absent members. I think all of them will be here at some point today. Moving on to the minutes for the February 24th and February 24th meeting and the March 24th meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Is there any public comment on these items? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second. Is there, without objection, we'll just record everybody as an aye.
With the exception that, excuse me, Madam Chair, I wasn't here for the March 24th meeting, so I would recuse myself on that vote.
Okay. Duly noted. Okay, moving on to tab 3, the Executive Officer's Statement. Ms. Silverman?
Yes, good afternoon. What we want to provide to highlight to you today is an update on the March bond sale and the activation of unfunded approval. In March, we were successful with the Treasurer's Office, the bond sales and the general obligation. Excuse me, a little tired today. We were successful in the bond market, and this program received $1.35 billion in proceeds for the school facility fund program. And as a part of the agenda behind tab 9, the board will be considering an item to activate the unfunded approvals and provide apportionments using these funds. This is the second time in 2010 that the board has an opportunity to provide apportionments. And another item we wanted to highlight is the Imperial County earthquake. On April 4th, there was a magnitude 7.2 earthquake in Baja California and in Mexico, and that actually impacted a lot of the school districts in Imperial County. The Office of Public School Construction conducted outreach calls with the district in Imperial County to determine if any school facilities were damaged and to offer assistance. We'll be addressing an emergency item during this meeting pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.3 so that the board may fully discuss emergency earthquake relief measures. Additionally, OPSC is also presenting a tentative work plan for the board. For this purpose is transparency and workload management. The Office of Public School Construction has attached a tentative 90-day work plan for future state allocation board meetings. We would like to highlight 2 items that we'll be bringing forward in May. That includes a high-performance incentive grant program regulations and also addressing the financial hardship reviews. Any items added to this calendar may result in other items being postponed. As you know, we're trying to have shorter meeting times, obviously full discussions, but at this time we're seeking the board approval and adopting the agenda plan. Additionally, what we wanted to highlight also is the tax certification process for the bond sales. With all the bond sales that's going out in the market, we have a new process, and that process is requiring us to seek a tax certification for the projects that we're providing apportionments. In the interest of saving time and expediting the process, what the Office of Public School Construction has worked out a tentative process improvement that will actually allow us to provide the treasurer the list in advance of a meeting. So we believe that the certification process would be a 5-day turnaround as opposed to the prior 4 to 6 week timeline. So we've obviously worked closely with the Treasurer's Office to provide some improvements in this process. You should also see attached is your workload plan, and maybe for purposes we wanted to highlight that workload plan for the next 3 months. So if there's any objections to the workload plan.
I think we can, does anyone have any thoughts about workload? Or we can continue to work on those as we move forward. Mr. Harvey?
I just want to congratulate both you, Madam Chair, and staff for bringing this formally to us. I know it's always been part of our agenda, but I think it's helpful for us to see what you contemplate. And I think it's incumbent upon us as a body to review it, and if we wish to make changes in it by moving something back or forward, now would be the time to do it, or our monthly meetings would be the time to do it. And I have experience because when I served on the Teacher Credentialing Commission, we had such a device, and it gave that body an opportunity to have input into the policy making. And I think that's what we're about. So I want to thank you for bringing it forward and allowing us an opportunity to endorse it, comment on it, change it as appropriate. But I also think it's wise to say if you move something up, you got to take something off. It's not a matter of always adding to the agenda, but it's a collective decision. I think that's what we also do here. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ms. Moore?
I have a comment. Great. I think it is appropriate to have the workload list. However, it says in our agenda that we are asked to approve this item. I don't actually believe it has been agendized, and so I don't think we can take any action on it. And actually, I believe at our last meeting, maybe it was 2 meetings ago, we gave authority to you to work with staff on an as-needed basis, and I think we would want to continue that. If this is going to be an agenda item, it should go out to the public as well, and I wouldn't want to take any action on it today absent that.
Right. I think Ms. Silverman and I just had a discussion about really highlighting the key things that are coming up, and that's more than we really aren't necessarily asking for approval, but really just to really focus everyone thinking ahead on what we're going to do over the next 3 meetings or so. So thank you for that.
Madam Chair, one of the things that I've noticed is it is on our alphabetical listing as an item, but even above and beyond that, if it pleases the board, one of the things you can do is just kind of provide input to staff so they can use it as a working document.
Right. That's the goal, and we'll continue to work on it. Okay, moving on to Mr. Harvey.
Thank you. If I might segue into this report to do one on behalf of DGS, and it's my privilege to introduce to all of you Lance Davis, who will be the attorney assigned to this body. Lance has been a vital part of our organization, although the subject matter of education is not his primary focus. It will be from here on out, and he has been mentoring with and sharing time with Henry Nanjo. Lance has been at our meetings, observing. This is the first time he is sitting at the dais, and it's a transition period. And I wanted to acknowledge him and thank him, and also recognize Mr. Nanjo for his second term. His responsibilities are broad and deep at DGS, and we thank him for spending time with us yet again. But Lance, welcome. And thank you for being part of making kids safer and better in their schools.
Okay, so moving on to tab 3A. On April 4th, 2010, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake occurred in Baja, California. Damage extended across the border into Imperial County and many other border cities. Particularly hard hit was the city of Calexico, whose children are still unable to return to their schools. Representatives from the California Emergency Management Agency, the Division of State Architects, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency have been in the most significantly damaged areas to perform preliminary damage assessments. The Office of Public School Construction has been in communication with school districts in the affected areas. On April 13th, 2010, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger declared a state of emergency and signed Executive Order S0510. Government Code Section 1125.3 permits the State Allocation Board to hear items of business not posted on the agenda upon a finding by a majority vote of the members that an emergency situation, such as a crippling disaster that severely impairs public health or safety, or both, or upon a finding by a 2/3 vote of the members that there exists the need to take immediate action and that the need for action came to our attention subsequent to the agenda being posted. In an abundance of caution, the Chair is recommending that the State Allocation Board make both findings to consider the activation of funding for the Calexico Unified School District, project number 57/63099-00-003, and provide other options to other school districts impacted by the earthquake, including but not limited to San Pasqual Valley Unified School District, project number 57/63214-00-001. May I have a motion to hear this item? If there's no objection, well, I think we should call the roll. Sue, can you call the roll on this item?
Senator Hancock?
Aye.
Senator Huff. Assemblymember Fuller. Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Kathleen Moore.
Aye.
Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cynthia Brand.
Aye.
Carries.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Silverman, do you want to go ahead and present this item?
Sure. What we wanted to do is address the board about the earthquake relief measures that we're providing for these school districts impacted by this earthquake. And as the chair has nicely stated, this Imperial County School District was severely impacted by the earthquake on April 4th. And with that, staff is requesting that the board's approval of the recommendations of providing relief to these districts and school districts that have been impacted by the earthquake. On April 4th, there was a 7.2 magnitude earthquake that occurred in Baja, California, and damage extended across Imperial County and many border cities. One of the hardest hit, as stated earlier, is the city of Calexico. The earthquake was followed by 350 aftershocks. Subsequent to the main earthquake, representatives from Division of State Architect, CalEMA, also toured the most significantly damaged to perform preliminary damage assessments to these school sites. And on April 13, 2010, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger declared a state of emergency for Imperial County and signed an executive order S-06-10 as a preliminary step to secure federal disaster funding. The Office of Public School Construction has been coordinated with CalEMA and the Division of State Architect to accurately identify the extent of the K-12 facility damages. To date, the Office of Public School Construction has been in contact with school districts in Imperial County, San Diego, and the Riverside counties Requests for assistance have been made by several school districts in Imperial County. However, no request for funding from school districts in San Diego and or Riverside County has been made to date. In Imperial County, the Office of Public School Construction has been working closely with school district officials from the Calexico and San Pasqual Valley Unified School District to formulate the best program funding options. Imperial County has sustained damage to 8 school districts out of the 17 in the county. Preliminary damage assessments for these damaged school sites total in excess of $11.2 million. These estimates have not been approved or finalized by CalEMA. On page 3, staff has summarized the damage incurred by school districts. And in a separate item, staff is recommending that the board provide apportionments for the project listed on the unfunded list with reference to tab 9, stamp page 180. Included in the recommendations for apportionments is Calexico's Unified Modernization Project already completed at the Calexico High School. Should the board approve staff's recommendation and activation of the unfunded approval, staff will be able to immediately process Calexico fund release requests and authorize the State Controller's Office to release the funds to the district within 2 days. This project reimbursement will provide funds to the district that can make use of the money and funds to repair the project, to initiate that cash to repairs for the district for those various sites. Staff would like to thank the Treasurer's Office for expediting the certification in advance of the board's action today. In addition, San Pasqual Valley Unified School District has requested the board consider their unfunded approval for modernization project at San Valley High School for the acceleration of the apportionment ahead of other school districts on the unfunded approval list. The district's project is not currently included in staff's recommendation for apportionment since it cannot be directly linked as a result of the earthquake. This project was intended to modernize 5 classrooms and the gymnasium on the campus, and due to the ongoing geographical liquefaction issues exacerbated by the earthquake, the district would instead like to use this funding to demolish and replace the 5 classrooms. The district believes that they will still be able to complete the project with the modernization funding allowance. Consistent with past practices, this is a change of scope that would need DSA approval for the new plans and require an SAB approval for the change of scope. Staff at this time does not support the request for acceleration of funding and approval for this item. It would create an inequity issue. Staff has presented other options for the district at this time, and the board should explore if they want to provide funds due to health and safety reasons for this project as a part of the priorities of funding items. That's listed in tab 8, stamp page 175. The board has funds available from the state relocatable program that could be used to assist school districts in relocating up to 52 classrooms from the phased-out relocatable program. These portables are located throughout the state, the closest being in San Bernardino and Los Angeles County, and the farthest being in Mendocino County. The OPSC is currently talking to previous contractors for estimates to move these portables to these school sites. As mentioned earlier, the cost of the portables is about $7,200 per portable plus $21 a mile. The board has several options to provide the state relocatables to the district, offer them San Pasqual Valley for purchase. Another option is to offer them to lease for interim housing, or also offer them on a temporary basis $1 a year lease with no moving or installation cost to the district. Currently, San Pasqual Valley has negative new construction eligibility. The district purchased 5 portables. If the district purchased 5 portables or the state loaned the relocatables to the district, their eligibility would not be materially impacted. The district would be able to use the portables in the interim to assist them with the earthquake damages until funding is available for their modernization project, or keep them and save their modernization eligibility for other facility needs. After the Northridge earthquake, FEMA covered moving costs and the use of facilities, and school districts were not involved in that process. The state and FEMA had a contract, and FEMA reimbursed the state for 90% of those costs. Staff is in need to contact Calima to verify whether or not this program would be eligible for this reimbursement. So at this time, staff recommends the approval of Calexico High School Modernization Project for reimbursement by approving staff recommendation and recommendation 1 in the activation of unfunded approvals listed on your agenda item. And at this time, we also would request the board to deny San Pasqual's Valley request to accelerate the apportionment for that particular project. The board should explore whether or not they want to provide funds due to health and safety issues for this project, and offer 5 state relocatable classrooms to San Pasqual Valley Unified on a temporary basis for $1 per year, with no moving or installation costs to the district to house the students displaced by the earthquake damage. And at this time, I also recommend direct staff to continue working with the damaged districts after Calima has made their final eligibility determinations to determine if ineligible FEMA activities are eligible for reimbursement under this program.
Okay, are there, I know we have representatives here from Calima, from the Calexico School District, and the San Pasqual School District. So I'm guessing board's pleasure to hear from those representatives. So why don't we go ahead then? Should we start with Calexico? And while Calexico is moving up here, I do want to really say thank you to Ms. Silverman and her staff and all the people at OPSC and in our emergency management systems in the state for their diligence in working with all of the affected residents of Imperial County.
Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, thank you, honorable members of the board. My name is Vivi Ariano. I'm the business manager for the Calexico Unified School District, and I want to thank you for all your support and for all the efforts of all the agencies that are involved. We have worked closely with the Office of Public School Construction, with CalEMA, and with FEMA as well to work through the recovery process for the Calexico students. Right now, just to provide you, if you'd like, with a brief update, and if you have any questions, you can address those specifically. The initial recovery phase entailed inspections and assessments and abatement process, and as well as compliance with the procurement process. As of today, our rebuild and repair phase has started. We have executed contracts with general contractors to begin the construction phase to assure that students at best would come back to school May 10th. We're looking at a 5 to 7 construction repair phase, and immediately follow we'll have the reopen phase where we can provide service to students.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Again, we're here to help, and sorry for everything you've gone through. The pictures from the one school are just unbelievably. I'm glad it was Easter.
Yes, we're blessed that it was Easter Sunday and everyone was with their families. We do want to add that we are providing continuity of instruction. I have the high school principal, Gilbert Barraza, with me, and what we try to do is either through cyber programs or remote facilities, because all our school sites were damaged and are unsafe for children, we're able to provide instruction in one way or another to keep the students' academic performance up.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any questions, are there?
Questions? Okay.
Okay, then Mr. Showman from San Pascual.
Good afternoon. David Schoeneman, Superintendent, San Pasqual Valley Unified School District. Madam Chairman, members of the board, we just want to thank DSA, Craig Rush, particularly out of the San Diego office, for his quick action in contacting our district, working with them, and then also the follow-up work of Dave Z and OPSC. We had been working, we started this whole thing, was identified by our middle school project that we put in for new school construction. In the process of that planning and that construction, identified a significant problem with the soils, which required quite an extensive foundation and substructure to support any new construction. Upon seeing that, I brought to the attention particular cracking and foundation issues that we had in our other floors. And they took that into account, and we have a report that noted that if there were any significant seismic activity in our particular area, we could have a pretty catastrophic problem. Fortunately for Calexico, their students were out, and it's a blessing to be sure that no one was injured in that process. At present, with this report and our observation and follow-up observation to DSA, we're at risk in the district. Kind of a double whammy situation. When the Colorado River floods, being expansive soil, the water table rises and actually has flooded the district, which has caused some of the more severe trouble. As a continued seismic activity, although not, shall we say, catastrophic, these continuing shocks, aftershocks, are continuing to work the cracking problem. It's not going away. I never have presented the fact or presented the case that San Pasqual has had a catastrophic collapse or anything of that effect. To be sure, Calexico, a unified school district, deserves all the consideration that the state can possibly give it. San Pasqual, though, is one that's more of a preventive type state, so we don't have the situation, and we may not even have the luck if there is a seismic event and for our students not to be there. That's kind of a tough risk for a superintendent to take, especially with the fact that we know that we have a growing problem there. To that end, we look at the 3 projects that we had before on the unfunded list. The one to us that we felt made the most sense was the modernization one for the high school. At least we could start the process in correcting this problem by taking the modernization money and using that to, shall we say, mitigate the issues, at least partially of them, at the high school. And by using those, and I think it's within the guidelines of modernization money, that if you can show that new construction would be cheaper than modernization, there's an argument to be had there. That's the case at San Pasqual. In order for us to mitigate or to straighten out the problem with modernization, you've got to change the foundation. Well, that means those classrooms are going to come down. So that was pretty much my discussion there. As far as moving projects ahead, my comment has always been on that part. We're a hardship district. The middle school project, the other ones are ready to go. If there's a desire on the government's part to get money out to areas in need of high unemployment and need, your small school districts across the state who are a hardship is the place to invest your money. So that's, pretty much my case with regard to that. So what we're looking at also, as you consider or should be brought into consideration here, are your health and safety issues as well. As you move forward and as you allocate money, look at your projects to help mitigate any health and safety issues that might come up with further structural issues. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Ms. Moore?
Can you speak a little bit about, in our report, it indicates that the gym floor and area at the high school was damaged, and that's part of the reason that you requested to move forward with your project at the high school, and that there are classrooms there that appear, were they damaged by the earthquake, and therefore that's why you're asking for that? Because the staff recommendation is not to grant you movement in line, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
And let me say this about your staff. They've been very clear and have communicated very openly about the position. So, I think none of this comes as a surprise, and actually encouraged me to come and talk to the board. So they should be commended for that as well. With regard to the gym, our push has always been to try to replace the classrooms. The gym floor has been compromised. We can't level the wood floor in it anymore. The moisture comes through and pretty much wipes out the wood floor every time we put a new one in. So it's of a critical nature as well, but you have to have classrooms to move forward. If we need to, you can shut the gym down, but it's, as Calexico's finding out, it's hard if you don't have your classrooms.
But can I ask a question? So the gym floor,
Yes.
though, following up on Ms. Moore's question, the gym floor is damaged because of your ongoing soil liquefaction problems or because of this recent event?
It's mainly going on because of the soil issues. It's exasperated by potential seismic activity. It is one of the buildings at risk, but you're correct, Madam Chairman. It has to do with the liquefaction process, which is by the water table and in conjunction with seismic activity.
Mr. Harvey?
Does that answer?
Yeah.
It does. Just a little bit of a follow-up. Then it's also recommended in our emergency packet that that the state offer and provide emergency portables to your district.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that part of the solution of this particular site, and would that be helpful? Is that part of what you're looking at in terms of what the state can provide?
I guess you work with what you can get. Being a hardship district, you welcome any assistance that you can get. But the long-term help, the long-term assistance, quite honestly, Ms. Moore, would be to do something with the classrooms there, because at the same time, as you know, being a hardship district, our vendors who have helped us, develop plans and things as we were going through the process for funding the state model, we can't pay them. And with our projects on hold and things not coming through, we're quite honestly being hammered by our vendors as well. And I know that in the past, there's been compensation made for those projects that did get bid and got started, and the funding had issues, and those vendors were taken care of. So I need to speak on behalf of my vendors as well. So if we can move that project, I can take care of a lot of problems besides mitigating our structural problems.
Mr. Harvey, then Senator Hancock.
I beg your pardon?
Mr.
Yes.
Harvey.
If I might, I'd like to come at it a different way.
Okay.
I heard staff suggest that we had an option later on in our agenda to be able to apportion these through health and safety. And I'd like to have your comment on that, because to me that is the cleaner, safer way of going for a number of reasons. Number one, we had to notice this on an emergency basis, and the findings were tied directly to the earthquake. We can make that finding easily for Calexico. Yours is less clear. And if you're satisfied to address the issue with us later in the agenda, where we might be able to get to your questions under health and safety, that's where I would prefer to go, but I would like to hear your reaction. It's a different way of skinning the cat. It gets you perhaps the desired result, but we do it in a different agenda item.
I would agree. I think that does make sense. The part about moving projects ahead, once again, goes back to another issue, and that's not necessarily your health and safety issues like what we're talking about, was more like, along the lines we're getting, money out to help do the stimulation things. That's what's been talked about. If you want to do that, that's why I made the pitch for your hardship small districts. Otherwise, I definitely see the logic of moving to the secondary statement.
I think this board is looking forward to having that very discussion.
Great.
So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Hancock.
You bet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I would like to see us move forward and give this district the money that they need to make the repairs today. And it's my understanding that in 2008, there was an engineering report that said the buildings were in imminent danger of collapse, some of the buildings, but that the district, for some reason, wasn't informed that there was a seismic fund. And as we know, there's difficulties in the definition of imminent danger of collapse and how we get one so that we speed up getting that money out. So the one thing I want to be sure of is if we just do Calexico now, which I'd be in favor of, and we wait till tab 8, do we have to agree to any particular, are we presupposing any particular policy outcome of tab 8, or can we just go ahead and do it under health and safety when we get there? Because if we can, that would be a better thing to do, I think.
I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're presupposing anything, and I think it's actually in tab 9 where we apportion, and I think that we can move them up at that point if we so desire. Correct? Any objections? Okay, then.
Okay, good.
And I don't know if we need to hear, if anybody had any questions for Kaleem. Oh, Assemblywoman Brownlee?
Well, I think maybe you were going there with Cal-EMA, because in just asking in terms of the staff's recommendation here, and I understand that the staff is recommending that they continue to work with FEMA around these projects, but how that interrelates relative to any monies. Well, I guess the Calexico High School is not receiving any additional monies. They're just getting their modernization money that they needed. Never mind.
Thinking out loud.
Yeah. Because FEMA, I was a school board member during the Northridge earthquake, and we had lots of damage at our schools, and FEMA was very good at being there, providing temporary housing for students, and getting the money out very, very quickly for repairs.
Okay, any other questions?
Just one clarifying.
Yes.
So the 3 projects of San Pasquale are on the tab 8 or tab 9 list of projects?
No, they're not.
Okay, so if we move to a discussion of this issue in tab 9, their project isn't there, correct?
It's on further down the list on the unfunded approvals.
Oh, it is on the unfunded approvals.
It's on the unfunded.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it's not within the 960, but it's
Right.
on the list.
It's on the list.
All 3 of them are on the list?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it can be part of that discussion. Thank you.
Okay, then, well, is there a motion on Calexico?
Move Calexico. Second.
Why don't we go ahead and call the roll? Can't imagine.
Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
Senator Hancock. Senator Huff. Assemblymember Fuller. Assemblymember Brownlee. Assemblymember Hayashi. Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Kathleen Moore.
Aye.
Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cynthia Bryant.
Aye.
Carries.
Thank you. Okay, tab 4, consent. Is there any public comment on consent?
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, on the recommendations on tab 3, we only addressed item 1. I don't know if the board wants to direct staff in any other way on those items.
Oh, thank you. Actually,
Recommendation number 3 for the portables.
I think, so do you need a vote on item 3? I think San Pasquale knows they can have them if they need them, and
Okay.
you can do the dollar. I don't think we need a vote on that, do we?
And we're requesting.
That's good.
And also, obviously, continue your due diligence in working with all the districts in the affected area. And I actually think that it'd be good if we put on the agenda for the next meeting an additional earthquake item in terms of an update, what's going on. I think everyone would be interested in knowing where.
As a follow-up action.
A follow-up action,
Correct.
and if we need additional actions, we can take them.
Yes,
So.
and we'll prepare to do that.
Right.
And Madam Chair, that's correct. It's within staff's delegation to go ahead and take care of the portables, so you don't need a motion for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Glad I was correct. All right, so tab 4, consent. Is there a motion? Any public comment on the consent items?
Thank you, Dave.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Senator Lowenthal. Aye. Senator Hancock.
Aye.
Senator Huff. Aye. Assemblymember Fuller. Aye. Assemblymember Brownlee.
Aye.
Assemblymember Hayashi. Aye. Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Kathleen Moore.
Aye.
Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cynthia Bryant.
Aye.
Carries.
Okay, next is tabs 5 and 6, I'm suggesting that we just take those up together. We moved the status of funding ahead on the agenda from where we usually have it in order just to have, for all of us to have the background as we move into the next couple items.
Correct. We've presented this item many times. We've just given the board an update of the status of the bond sales that occurred last year in 2009. Collectively, in 2009, we received $2.6 billion in bond proceeds, and that was sales that occurred in March 2009, April 2009, October 2009, and the November sales in 2009. And so out of that, those funds have been allocated to this program. We wanted to highlight in the chart on page 149 that last month we only liquidated $26 million from those prior bond proceeds. And so we also wanted to highlight, there's a new chart on the back page of 149. There is a new chart there showing that the March proceeds of the $1.3.5 billion is there to show that the pot of money is there and the various allocations, and once we get certification, we'll start releasing those funds. What we wanted to present to you today is a new chart on tab. It's also on page 149, but it's 149A. And what that chart reflects, again, like I shared with you earlier, is in 2009 we received $2.6 billion in bond proceeds. And so if you follow the chart month by month, and if you look at the balances in March 2010, from that bond proceeds, we actually liquidated $1.894 billion from those bond proceeds. And as of March, there was still $733 million available for disbursements for those projects that have prior apportionments. And what that chart reflects now is in our balances from the new $1.3 billion in cash from the March bond sale, we have over $2 billion in bond proceeds available for this program. And so, again, highlight, we've been successful in our bond program and receiving proceeds, but we need to match that up with the liquidation. The liquidation is a big concern, and that's the subject of the item of discussion for our policy issues. So with that, if you have any questions with the chart.
Are there any questions for Ms. Silverman on these two items? Okay, thank you.
I would move items 5 and 6, if that's appropriate to do together.
Do we need to adopt them for the information?
It would just be accept the report.
Yeah. Okay, we'll accept them and we'll substitute our unanimous roll call for acceptance. I clarified, I'm not calling the roll every time. Okay, next is consent specials, tab 7. Is there any public comment on this item or questions from the board? Not, is there a motion?
That's what I thought I was moving last time, sorry.
Okay. We'll substitute the previous motion. It was moved by Senator Hancock. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harvey. We'll again substitute our unanimous roll call without objection. Okay, moving on to just a little item, tab 8. Tab 8 is the priorities and funding item. At our last meeting, we had a brief discussion about the fact that we had a very successful bond sale at the time of $376 million. At the time, we received a report from staff about how the unfunded list was managed, and a number of concerns were raised about where we would cut off the list and whether or not we needed to make adjustments. Scott Harvey, Kathleen Moore, and I agreed to create a task force for OPSC to work with. Right after the meeting, we learned that the April bond sale provided our program with an added $975 million. This led us to work on the development of this spending's priority item. We now have, as Lisa just explained, 1.3512 ready to apportion. In our next item, we have a recommendation to apportion $941 million of that. And while I want to focus on the larger policy discussion, the recommendation in the next item retains flexibility for us to make changes if we so desire. In our discussion, I hope we do not get into specific questions about item 9, such as spending order or financial hardship. And a brief aside on the financial hardship, I did want to let the board know it was my decision to move changes to the financial hardship regulation in next month because I thought it made sense, given this discussion, to only make changes to it once. So I'd like to thank everyone in the regulated community who put my words from last month in letters reminding me that I flip-flopped and changed my mind. Loans from the pooled money investment account ended over 18 months ago. It doesn't appear that they will resume anytime soon, and I feel it's really important for us to stop, take a deep breath, and ask ourselves, do we want to continue the policies that have guided our program in these difficult times? Are our policy objectives being achieved? Are we protecting the state and not incurring unnecessary interest costs by selling bonds for projects that are not ready to go? Are we achieving the economic stimulus we desire? The staff will present 3 options for our consideration, but I would like to suggest that we do not have to be bound by these, nor do we have to make changes or decide today. But what we really need to make sure is that we are accomplishing what we want to accomplish in the overall program. So with that, I'll have Juan go ahead and present it unless anybody wants to add something immediately to my comments. Okay, Juan, go ahead.
Thank you for that great background, Madam Chair. Just to put it in the context, what we're talking about is discussing options for sort of a pilot program. And this would be for the remaining funds that Madam Chair just talked about in terms of the $1.3 billion, awarding apportionments for $960 million. We really have $415 million left to discuss in terms of changing the way we make apportionments. So before we discuss how we possibly contemplate making changes, I wanted just to go over the current process. Right now, districts submit funding applications to our office. We review the applications, and we'll present it to the board and place them on an unfunded list. Once funds become available, we then move them from the unfunded list and grant apportionments. When a project receives an apportionment, then the school district can come in and submit a fund release request. And just to give you some background, the fund release request, districts have to enter into a binding contract for at least 50% of the work. They have to issue notice to proceed. So those are the kind of certifications that they need to submit for a fund release request. Now, the districts also have 18 months to submit this fund release request. So if they receive an apportionment, they will have 18 months to come in and submit the fund release request to our office. So with that, the first option is basically do nothing. Maintain the current process. Basically, the process will not change. We will still process projects and place them on the unfunded list. As we receive funds, we will move down the unfunded list and grant apportionments. And again, the districts will then have 18 months to come in and submit a fund release request. A couple of things with this is this will provide consistency in the program, and districts will have the ability to expect the funding order from the recent bond sales. However, this process doesn't prioritize projects that are ready to construct, and apportionment funds could be unused for up to 18 months. So option 1 is basically to stay the course and take no action. Option 2, we change the process a little bit. Option 2 proposes to award conditional apportionments. And these apportionments would be to all of the projects on the unfunded list. So right now, we have about $2.2 billion on the unfunded list. That means that all of these projects, actually, let me correct that. We propose to make apportionments from the $1.3 million that we have available. If we do, we will grant apportionments to 960 million projects. That means that we'll have a resulting unfunded list of about $1.2 billion. So that means that all of these projects on this unfunded list will be able to submit a conditional apportionment. By doing so, these districts will be able to submit a fund release request. The idea here is that all the projects that are ready to move forward will have that ability. So everybody will be able to compete and submit a fund release request. Part of this option, though, does require to have certain conditions placed on these apportionments. We've discussed this option with legal counsel, and they have advised us that we would need to have very strict language to basically absolve the state from any kind of liability. Just to give you an example, part of the language that we are proposing to include is that the conditional tentative apportionment will commence the 18-month time limit requirement under the Education Code for all projects receiving such condition tentative apportionment, and to the extent that funds are available, will allow for funding for the project. We also want to include language such as, although the state allocation board has provided the project with a conditional tentative apportionment, such apportionment is different from a normal unqualified apportionment in that a conditional tentative apportionment does not in any way assure, guarantee, or promise that the full funding does or will exist for the project. So the idea here is that basically districts understand that there are some conditions placed on these projects. But again, the main option for option 2, the main objective for option 2 is to give everybody an apportionment with these conditions so that everybody can compete. That means that more projects will be able to submit a fund release request. We do know that some projects could be on hold, if you will, because district circumstances may have changed, so they may not be ready to go. But we also know that there are other projects that are ready to go and ready to construct, so they may be able to compete under this new option. Is there any questions on option 2? I can go through each option and answer questions before I move to the next one.
I just keep going.
Okay. Option 3 is a little different. We basically will prioritize apportionments to projects that are ready to submit fund releases. As I mentioned earlier, the process to award a fund release request is that districts have to submit these fund releases and certify that they've entered into contracts and that they've issued notice to proceed. This proposal changes that in that it adds a certain certification that districts can certify that if they do receive an apportionment, they can come in and submit a true fund release request within 60 days. So basically, we will have the opportunity for all projects currently on the unfunded list to make the certification on a revised or preliminary 5005. The 5005 is a fund release form. They will be able to make these certifications, and then based on the districts that can make that certification that they will come in for a fund release within 60 days of an apportionment, then the board could grant those projects an apportionment. So the idea behind option 3 is that everybody in the unfunded list will be able to submit this revised fund release form that certifies that they can come in right away, and the board will make apportionments to those projects that are ready to go. Again, this will promote or allow projects that are ready to submit a fund release request to be able to compete with the funds. Another point that I wanted to make is that the apportionments will be awarded in date order at each board meeting. So if we have multiple projects that submit these preliminary fund release requests, we will then sort them in date order of the SAB unfunded approval. Staff will present each month all of the projects that submit a fund release request within a certain date and then list them in order based on the unfunded approval date. The other information that I want to provide is that this option may, and I want to underscore that, may require regulation changes. At this point, we're not sure. However, I do want to point out that we want to do everything that we can to implement these options as soon as possible if the board so chooses. So we are still working on the mechanics of both of these options. Another highlight that I wanted to make is that we will have to make special consideration for financial hardship projects, as well as facility hardships. We just talked about some of the health and safety issues. We would have to give special consideration to those types of projects and how they will fit under both of these schemes. At this point, both of these options are sort of high-level discussions on the concepts. We do plan on coming back and providing the board with more detail on how to implement each of this if the board decides to go with one of the options. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on option 2 and 3.
Just a couple comments from a legal standpoint. Option 3 will, in all likelihood, require regulations. It's difficult to say that that can be done without regulations. I know we're at high level, but that's a fundamental change in the way this board has been handling those applications. With regards to option 2, we've done our best to put some language that could protect the board, but that particular option is not without risk, so it is not completely safe. So I just want to leave that caveats for the board in their consideration.
Okay, are there any other board members have anybody have questions, comments? Mr. Senator Lowenthal?
Yeah, I just want to clarify what I heard under option number 3. I thought you were saying, one, that they first do the preliminary fund release, and that I thought I heard you say which will require districts that they can submit something. Is it they can or they? But I thought it's they will. It's much.
They will.
So it's more than can. They
Yes.
will submit it. They are committing to submitting it. Not that they are able to submit it. They will.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Harvey?
I want to thank staff for bringing this forward, because it does get to, I think, what this body has talked about, which is to move money where it needs to go. We are on a new course, and I like the idea that it's a pilot. And I would suggest that as a pilot, we might want to be somewhat risk-taking and ask staff to really work very hard, if we give direction in one of these options, to do it without a regulatory change, that we do it as a pilot, as an experiment. We come back and look at what it resulted in, and then we change the regulations to conform what our lessons learned were. I kind of like option 3. It is getting to the nub, which is those that are ready shall come forward, will come forward. Even though we're conditionally putting language in on option 2, I think we're still potentially exposing the state to some liability. So I am drawn to 3, because it really says if you're ready to go in 60 days, you will. So we're benefiting the private sector, we're creating jobs, we're building schools where they need to be built, and I think that should be our first call.
Lowenthal?
Yeah, I too agree with Scott. I like number 3, but the word of caution is, if we're really trying to get these projects out as quickly as possible, and Henry says we've got to go through a regulatory process, what are we really talking about in terms of timing?
Oops, sorry. The regulatory process normally takes 4 to 6 months, unless there's justification there for an emergency regulation, which you may be able to do. So 3 months, yeah, under an emergency regulation. That being said, it's going to take some time to kind of restructure the process, so that may dovetail, but it's up to the board. There is a time constraint involved with number 3, option 3.
Assemblywoman Fuller?
I think our goal for all of us on the board is to get this money out on the street as soon as possible, and all of us have districts that are ready and clamoring for the money. And it seems to me that option 2 provides us with the most opportunity to make the most expedient use. If we are, since we are going to do another meeting either way, evidently, and staff is going to be charged to work very, very hard to find the language that guards us against that liability, then we could judge that at the next meeting. I think 3, initially I really liked 3, and I thought about it a long time, but at the end of the day, it's not particularly speedy, and it has its risks because we haven't even thought about the regulations that we might come up with. And so We still have the objection that about 2 in 3, only it's going to take us longer to find that out. So I'm I think, more supportive of 2 at this time, given that 1, the criteria is to get the money out on the street as soon as possible. 2, school districts get really confused, and every time you change the whole process, you have to get it all out there. And they understand this process with number 2. And so I'm inclined to leave it alone unless I'm sure it's broken. And it sounds like at the next meeting, we can have some good options brought forward to minimize the risk.
Senator Hancock?
Yeah, I actually like number 3, too. We could also leave it the way it is and just try to really push that money out there. But if we did number 3, it was suggested to me at some point in our briefing today that it would be possible to do a policy change so that you would not have to go through a whole regulatory process, and that we could really look at this as really a kind of pilot project, because we're really only talking about the $415 million that's left after we give out the rest of the money. And what people's concern, I think, is that it might be unfair to certain districts, especially smaller districts that might not be ready, might not be fully staffed and ready to go get out there. But if we did do it as a policy change and as a pilot project, we could ask that staff collect data and come back to us and tell us who was skipped over and why, who got in this process, so that we could actually make a definitive final policy at the end of the time. But we would also be moving forward to get the jobs and the schools built. So if that's a possible thing, I'd like to suggest we might think of that.
I think we can. Like I said in my earlier remarks, I think that this is pretty wide open. It doesn't. I think what I was trying to assess from all of you is whether or not there's a desire to somehow or another invigorate how quickly cash is going out and getting out into construction. And I think that's the ultimate goal, and there's a number of approaches. I think I'm with you in favoring the least invasive approach, so we're not doing massive regulatory changes because we won't get quick results. So can we do something where we reorder our list by setting new policy on a one-time basis or something? And the staff's worked amazingly hard on this, and so have a couple of my colleagues as well on here. And they're thorny, difficult questions, and it's going to take a lot of time and investment of energy from all the experts in the room and here to make it happen if we want to do something different. I think there are probably a few public comments on this item. I'm not sure, but maybe we could hear from a few.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Tom Duffy from CASH. This has been a difficult issue for us and for school district members because of the longstanding tradition of date order. You have a chair that has been very compelling in her quest for answers to questions that are difficult to answer. We worked with Cynthia and put together a survey of our members asking the question, and we sent that to you. I don't know, did you receive that, Ms. Green? Asking the questions about how soon would you come in for the dollars. And we had, I think, a fairly good response, and basically about 77% said that they would come in within a 60-day period. So even without changing anything, it may be that you would have a call on these dollars. But I expect from the discussion that you would want to make some kind of change. And we would first admonish that you do that with some deliberation and on the part of yourselves and your staff and districts, and we would commit to work with you to explore what it is that would work, whether it's option 2, because it is really more of the current program where everybody is apportioned conditionally and then having to come in on their own to decide whether or not they would ask for funds. But if you were to do this, I would ask that you consider a couple of things. One is that this be recognized that there isn't precedent that's being set here, that we're in an unusual time, and school districts are really struggling at the local level for a variety of reasons. And I have to compliment the write-up on this, where it talks about the various issues that districts are experiencing today. So no precedent being set there. I think if you were to go forward with 2 or 3, I think it's important to limit the amount that a particular district could have. LA is a very large district. It has lots of needs, and it's got its matching funds. I'm not sure where they would be with this, but I would want to make sure that every district had an opportunity to come in, but that it not be a large share of the funds available not go to in one district or a few districts. It may be that you also want to consider having a time limit on this pilot, Mr. Harvey, and so that you could gauge, and I think, Senator Hancock, your comment about being able to gather information, gather data during a particular time, whether it's 6 months or longer. But we have had concerns about these kinds of proposals in the past. We really would like to dialogue with you, and Ms. Bryant, we really would like to see districts coming in and drawing down those dollars to stimulate the economy, to take care of modernization and new construction needs. It's just very difficult at the local level today when districts are laying off teachers and struggling with general fund budgets to be able to explain to a public that isn't sophisticated necessarily that these are capital dollars, they can't be spent on teachers, and we're going to go forward with a project. But I would just ask for your consideration of those comments. And thank you, Ms. Bryant, for the opportunity to dialogue with you away from this setting. Thank you very much.
I think Ms. Green has a question that might be directed to you.
In terms of making it fair for smaller school districts who may not be prepared to do this, would an extension of the 60 days to maybe 90 or 120 days based on their size or their hardship or whatever, would the day amount of time make a difference?
Thank you for asking that question. I actually had a note to comment on that, and I didn't. I think even beyond the size, certainly smaller districts may struggle even more, but what's happening at the local level today, because of the hunger within the construction industry, there are a number of protests that are happening at the local level, and they need to be addressed by school district boards before the board can go forward with a complete award. So we would recommend extending that to at least 75, if not 90 days. In California, the minimal amount of time to bid a project is 14 days, advertising twice in a newspaper over a 14-day period. After that, when bids are taken, if there are protests, they need to be dealt with, and there is also a due diligence where the district makes sure that everything is in place for the potential awardee in terms of bonds and the like. So additional time, I think, is required. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Richard Lyon on behalf of the California Building Industry Association. We really do appreciate the fact that the board is taking a look at trying to move projects forward in an expedited manner. And as we take a quick look at this, a couple observations. One, we do agree that time is of the essence here, and I know that's not to say that time is the only consideration, because there is liability and risk that's involved here. But as we take a look at the options, there is a kind of a distinction with a difference between option 2 and option 3. As we look at options, we look at option 2, and what jumps out at us is the seamlessness of option 2. You've got about $1.2 billion in terms of projects that are on the unfunded list. You've got a pilot program that's $400 million. So you've got known quantities. You've got a known amount of money. You've got a known demand for that. And to allow those projects within this pilot process to be able to compete equitably for that $400 million and move forward those who are ready to file a fund release seems to make the most sense to us. And this is something that, with the consideration of time, the board could do this by way of a policy without having to go through what could potentially be a long and a time-consuming regulatory process, which seems to work against what we're trying to do here, which is to move projects out the door. So this is a quick read. Either option are moving in the right direction, but our read on this is that the preferred approach would be option 2. Thank you.
I did want to just make one quick comment about, just to remind everybody in the room, and that we have not put any additional projects on the unfunded list for a couple of months now for a variety of different reasons, and there is a queue of projects that I would anticipate on the next agenda we would add to that list. And I think that's kind of an important thing, that we're not talking about what's in tab 9. There are going to be, that list will be somewhat longer the next time we take action on the unfunded list if we choose to maintain it. Just to clarify. Assemblywoman Brownlee.
I just wanted to make one comment relative to option 2. And I think that if there are districts who, were on the list and then actually didn't get the money, then, their 18-month requirement, that clock starts to tick. And there's no, they sort of get hit on that because their clock ticks, but they don't get the money. And is there some, way in which, if we were going to go down the path of 2, if they could be sort of remodulated and have their 18 months
we have
afforded to them?
In some of our discussions about it, we've actually referred to it as a light switch. It's on the time's ticking, but if we're out of cash or we're back into a freeze mode, that we would have to maintain the board's overall desire to hold everybody harmless when the state is the one, when there's a lack of cash. So I would agree with you on that point. Mr. Harvey?
If I might, that is the one issue in option 2 that troubles me. It's the 18 months. We have districts now, as Juan has said, that have actually pulled the trigger on the apportionment, but they haven't come in for the money. They've been apportioned money, but they haven't actually drawn it down. And option 2 can continue that. And that's the appealing thing of 3 says you got to say you're ready to do it in 60 days. So again, to me, if we are serious about moving it, option 3 is the only reason. And, districts declining enrollment, the optics of firing teachers and having a building program, I think there may be some that would hunker down on and use the full 18 months. So 3 gives us an off-ramp for moving the money quicker.
I actually think there's a poster child for this example, which now for some reason it fell out of my head. The Baldwin Park. This school district sent us a letter. They're the very next project on where the cutoff comes in tab 9. It's the next district, the next project. They're ready to go. Like they say in their letter, they can go to construction nearly immediately. And the arbitrariness of just drawing a line impacts that. I think they're just almost the poster child for having this discussion and seeing if there's a change that can be made. Senator Lowenthal?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on a comment that Senator Hancock made earlier, which I just wasn't sure of. She said, well, if we did want to move, let's say, to option number 3, and we were very concerned about, I'm paraphrasing, the long length of time for a regulatory kind of change, that we could call this a policy change and do it as a policy change and as a pilot project. Can you explain that to me? I'm just not clear on it. It seems very reasonable to me, but I need to understand what we're really. Why is that an option?
Well, I think. I and you guys, Lance, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm here, but I think what we've talked about in some of our meetings is about what we would really be doing is reordering the list, which we may have flexibility to reorder the list. I think when you're talking about a broad policy change, that might really become equivalent to a regulatory change, and so we'd have to be careful how it would go. But I think one of the things we pictured was if we make a decision about, we want to fund in this order. Like right now, we have a policy of funding in date order of when it's at the board, and then the second default level is when the application arrived at OPSC. that might be a policy change. But again, as Henry pointed out earlier, we would have to look at each one of these policy changes, see if we run afoul of, and we're in the regulatory world.
But we could do it as a as a policy, the change, and just change the order of what we're doing.
Plucking, like, for example,
pilot project.
For example, we had San Pasquale here. If we were so moved, we moved them up. And I mean, I don't know how it would work, and I don't know where we get to a point where we have crossed the line into underground regulations, and we'd want to avoid that.
I'm into going up to that line and just staying on the other side. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And a lot of this is going to be fleshed out when you have the details, but you've got really two concepts you need to be careful. We as a board, or you as a board, need to be careful about, and that is the concept that you don't want to be inadvertently creating underground regulations. At the same time, to the extent that your existing regulations has a certain process, you don't want to be in a situation where you've created a situation where either you're not following your regulations or you're operating contrary to your regulations. Now, there's this concept of a pilot program, or for lack of a better term, an exploratory creation that you make, and to the extent that we can take it, to use Senator Lowenthal's line, to the extent we can take it up to the line, we're more than happy to try to create something like that. But you got to remember, the closer to that line you get, the more risk you get that you're going to be challenged too. So,
and I think from my department's point of view, we would be very concerned about. We are in the realm of bonds, and we have bonds that have been sold, and we have bondholders out there, so we have to be very careful of the bond covenants and all of that as well. So, okay, is there any other? Oh, Ms. Moore.
I think these are extraordinary times, and that we have an obligation to really look at options that provide funding to school districts that may be ready to go. From the superintendent's perspective, though, we would want to be very careful that this is not precedent setting, that it truly is pilot, and that we gather the data from that pilot and are very thoughtful in our deliberations after that of how we may move on into the future. If I put my district hat on, as a district member, I'd be in option 3, because option 2 has an inherent risk in it for the district that goes to bid, says that they have it under contract, comes up, and lo and behold, we're at 470, and they are not going to get funded. They have a contractual issue. Yes, there's contractual language that you can do, but as Mr. Gibb might want to comment on, that's not really in good faith with your contractors in the area when you suddenly shut something down like that. So I think there's more risk to districts in my mind, and I'm very open to hearing more from districts about that in option 2. And to me, option 3 provides, I think, still a level of playing field in that if you're ready to go and you're on the list, you're going to be funded in that order. And so I'm more inclined to that because it keeps with the integrity of the list, which I think is very important, that we'll talk about in the next item about why we arrived at where we arrived at drawing the line on the list. So that's, yet, with that caveat, I think that if we have to go to regulations, we lose all the value of what we're debating here. 4 months from now, we should have just funded the list and take our knocks where we take them. So I don't know that that's the approach that we should as we enter these approaches, we should look to how we can achieve it without that. And if we can't achieve it without that, I'm not so sure it's all that terribly relevant. So those are our thoughts, and we look forward to more this next meeting. I think I don't know if we're ready to take action today. And I also compliment staff for putting together an item that we can truly have a very public discussion about something that's of interest to everyone, and they can see it as well and comment it over the next 30 days.
Senator. Senator Hancock. Oh, well.
And then
Mr. Duffy.
Just your discussion, comments, Ms. Moore, prompted some thoughts. And I know you talked about hardship districts earlier in your discussion, but there may be districts that are, and I can think of one, and I think I've shared this with you, Ms. Bryant, districts that have not acquired a site acquisition is part of the funding that they're after, and construction funding would follow. You cannot sign a contract to do construction for a site that you do not own. So consideration for that kind of project would, I think, be important to make sure that the playing field is level. So that hardship district site acquisition has to occur in advance, that they would be able to come into whichever their option to be able to identify that they're signing a contract to acquire the property, because that's indeed what happens, and then they would go on with construction thereafter. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Hancock.
Well, for the purposes of discussion, I'm going to try a motion. And that would be that we adopt option 3 as a pilot project for $415 million, and that we ask for a report to come at the end with data on how many projects were dropped back or moved up, and why the projects that got dropped did get dropped. And I would suggest that we take the 90 days to shovel ready.
From 60, changing from 60.
From 60. I'm just trying to pick up on Cash's suggestion that if you're talking about site acquisition or certain things, you might need the full 90 days. Having come from local government, I always worry about, you have things like Brown Act requirements to get things on the agenda, et cetera, et cetera. But again, this is a motion for discussion purposes, so if people have something else to suggest, I'm very open to it.
Okay, we have a couple of hands down here.
Hi, I just want to make sure, I mean, it's great that we're going to move an option forward, but I want to keep it open for discussion as far as whether or not we're going to move a motion for San Pasquale, or, I know we're talking about priorities, and then are we going to set the priorities for further discussion as a health and safety? We could adopt a motion, but have a consideration for, if we're going to move forward with a consideration for San Pasquale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the next item, right.
Next item.
Right. So the change in we could rephrase the motion slightly in that the balance left after we act in tab 9 would be what is in Senator Hancock's motion. I also think I feel a little uncomfortable with it from the standpoint that I'm not positive we know everything we need to know about option 3 for that we're positive we can execute it without a regulatory change and all of that. And I think what the heart of the motion is moving forward with option 3, and that means there's a lot of questions we have to answer inside of there. The things about the facility, hardship, do those move up, health and safety, some of the nuances that is not in the memo simply because we only had 30 days since the last meeting. So I think it may be that we were more providing a policy direction, and it has to get fleshed out as opposed to it absolutely is going to happen, because I think there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Direction to staff
to come back.
That we made a policy decision
that we want to get us here, staff.
We want to do. We would like to have it come back in final language next month.
Right. I think that's probably a safer place for us to be.
Well, I would modify my motion to say that in that case.
Assemblywoman Fuller.
If we can modify the motion so that it leaves room to default back to 2 if we have to go with regulation change. In other words, I would prefer not to be having to vote for 2 because 3 might end up being a regulation change. I'd be happy with 3 if it doesn't take a long time. So I don't know how to get there, but maybe we leave it open that we look into 3 and see if the policy changes can be made, and if not, then we look at 2.
Assemblywoman Bradley.
Yeah, I was just, I certainly like the direction that the motion's going in, and I do think we need a little bit more time to sort of go through these issues and make sure that there are no unintended consequences. I'm just wondering if, if we should, between now and the next meeting, have this vetted at the implementation committee and have them have a chance to chew on it and provide some recommendations as well. Recommendations to staff to make some final recommendations.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes, and Senator Hancock, I appreciate your leadership on this. Just a fine point, and I think I would just ask you to do the deliberation that you're talking about, because just the phraseology of which projects would get funded could certainly leave certain projects out. Back to the survey that we did, 72% of the respondents said that they were seeking reimbursement. So they have spent money on the project. You will reimburse them very much like Calexico, and they'll spend that money on another project to keep things going. So if the phraseology would be that they have to be a new project, shovel ready, then they would not necessarily qualify. So and I don't think that's what you're anxious to do. All right, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you wanted to speak again. I apologize.
Well, Mr. Duffy's taught me a lesson. Step forward. I just wanted to leave the board with a thought from San Pasqual, and that is we do have those 3 projects on there. Those 3 projects would go a long way toward mitigating the health and safety issues for our kids. However, that still leaves the bulk of the district, and all 3 sites, elementary, middle, and high school, are all on the same acreage there. And I would just respectfully request that you'd advance our projects 5001, 5002, 5701 through the list. But I would look forward to discussing further with staff the continuance of mitigating the rest of the district as well, because these projects alone will not take care of all the health and safety issues with regard to our students. So again, I thank you for your consideration and the time to listen to our presentation. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Madam Chair, as a point of clarification to make sure I understand board's direction as we move forward, at the last implementation committee meeting, depending on what board action or direction was here, informed my implementation committee that we might have a special meeting in May to discuss this. Is it the board's will that we set that and move forward with that special implementation committee to discuss the options?
Or as an alternative, something I've been thinking about is we could actually have it convene a true subcommittee and have it be at a subcommittee of the board. There's part of me, maybe it's because I've really spent a lot of time on this, thinking about it, and there's part of me that feels like this is such a substantial change that maybe it's even at a higher place than in implementation, if we're going to do it quickly, that we really need to have a place to listen to the concerns of everyone and really sit down and think about all of there's so many. I've already written down a list of 5 things I hadn't thought of just from what people have said today. So it's just an option. I'm personally willing to sit through that and to hear directly, as opposed to having it go to IMP and have poor Ms. Kaplan be the only one who's coming back and distilling the information to us. So it's just an option. Anybody is thinks it's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
If anybody's willing to do it with me. I don't really want to be alone.
Well, you got your subcommittee as a minimum.
Yeah. Okay, so then we can so maybe we'll do that then, if that works for everybody, and flesh out option 3 as Ms. Hancock described it in her motion, and with knowing that kind of.
Vote on option 3 first.
I think we have a pretty good sense of where everybody is.
I'll clarify after we this what exactly.
And we may not need to have. I mean, maybe we can. We may not really actually need a motion. That's my thinking. Is direction? We have strong direction, and we've heard from Assemblywoman Fuller that if we it's a fallback, choose a fallback, and it may marry in the end. And
so. So clarification is the working group or the subcommittee would be the establishment from those members who are on the working group, which is our chair, Scott Harvey, and Kathleen Moore. Subcommittee groups can have 4 members. I do not know if there's any other member that wishes to join. Then I will work. Then I will work with the 3 of you as staff and with OPSC of setting up an appropriate time. And then I just wanted to clarify, in reviewing option 3, to make sure that all the board's issues were addressed, that we address issues with small school districts and financial and facility hardships, whether they should get more time than the 90 days. There was a suggestion of potentially a carve-out that should be considered or looked at, how we deal with health and safety, and then how we're going to have a communication plan out to districts to make sure that districts know the process and policy with this new policy change that may come back.
And the number of days that would be in the mix, that whether or not site acquisition should be moved up on there, and I think you caught the rest of them. So
The only correction I would have is I would like to hear about the time frame rather than going in with 90.
Okay.
It could be 60, it could be 75, it could be not, who knows?
Absolutely. We'll make sure outreach.
If I may also, Cynthia, the subcommittee is a Begley-Keene Act committee, correct? A subcommittee meets under that, so it would be noticed. Yeah. Could we also have it, Mr. Harvey, could we have it webcast, I think, so that more districts can have access to?
I think we're required by law.
It's required by law.
Is it?
Even subcommittees have to be
of the State Allocation Board? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
And then based on
donations.
And then based on timing, to make sure that we have the agenda in Bagley-Keene, because it does require a 10-day working notice, board members might want to look at their calendar. Monday, I believe it's May 17th, is an appropriate, but probably one of the earlier days to get this, or I think Friday may be the first day, that very last week, so I think that's May 14th, but in reality, the 17th would probably be the earliest, once Bagley-Keene and agendize and get it out.
Okay. Well, you know how to reach our calendar, so. Okay, so thank you. Moving on to tab 9, I think this one, Lisa, who's... which one of you is doing this?
Tab 9, we started talking about the $1.3 billion that we have available. In the middle of the page, you have a chart that outlines the total amount and what bond source it came from. Just a quick summary, we have $266 million from Prop 47, $353 million from Prop 55, and $757 from Prop 1B for a total of $1.3 billion. We were talking about trying to make apportionments from the unfunded list in date order to basically keep the integrity of the unfunded list. And we did so until we reached to $960 million. After that point, we realized that given the different amounts of funds from the different propositions, we may have to skip over some projects depending on the bond source. That is why we drew the line at 960. We can go down 960. It doesn't change anything. We keep the integrity of the unfunded list, and that's why we set the line at 960. And we do have all of those projects that are ready for an apportionment. I don't know if you wanted me to explain anything else or why we drew the line there, but I think that's an important point that we didn't really get into in tab 8. So if there's any questions on that point, I can certainly answer them.
Are there any questions on this item?
Okay.
And the second part of the item is what we wanted to share is with the financial hardship re-reviews. I understand that the board took action in February to adopt a motion to basically, due to the fiscal crisis, not adopt the policy of following a re-review as a result of that crisis. understanding and sensitive to that issue and our ability to come back with a regulation package to clarify that, what we wanted to share with the board is there are regulations that are still in effect, and with that, and in fact, that, again, the requirement is that there are projects on the unfunded approval list, and they're all listed in recommendation item number 2 that would require a re-review because the regulations are still there. And as I said before earlier, our goal is to bring back a regulation package so that the board can clarify whether or not they want to follow those requirements or reset the date on those requirements. So the recommendation above is basically either you follow the recommendations you adopted in February, where you provided apportionments in item 1, and then the motion on item 2 is take a separate motion as far as whether or not you want to follow the re-review process for those projects or decide to exempt those projects from a re-review. And item 3 is leave those apportionments open for a full and final adjustment should the board decide to come back for the grant adjustment based on AB 127, which that issue is still open and it's not final. So the motion before you today is either you want to adopt item 1 for providing apportionments to those projects on the list that are not subject to the financial hardship review, and whether or not you want to follow the motion in item 2 to either accept those projects for a hardship review or exclude them for the review in item 2. So I'll leave the board for the recommendation.
Mr. Harvey?
I just want to set the scene by thanking you for bifurcating the motion. I think it is evidence to us that you have heard the board. You're providing an off-ramp for those that are comfortable doing that, and those that are more honor-bound, if they choose to follow legal counsel's opinion, they have the option to do that as well. And you haven't combined them. You've recognized an earlier action, and I want to thank you for that. I look forward to having the discussion. I think you've laid out the case very well for this first cut. I look forward to talking about the health and safety carve-out that we're trying to accomplish and what that then does to the 415, how we can narrowly do it so we're not setting precedent unduly. But I want to thank you for teeing this up the way you have.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll try, Cynthia. I first have a comment, and that is that I hope everyone understands that the reason that we drew the line at 960 is that is the exact space that we can fund all projects in date order. And after that, we do not have the ability to do that, and we would indeed be skipping projects that are in a different fund source. So that is clearly why the list line draws at 960. And then if I may try the first motion of 2. The first motion is such, I think it's the elephant in the room, and that is that for those hardship projects, that we provide apportionments in the amount of $199,316,120 to the projects identified in staff recommendation number 2. And this is consistent with the board's February 24th, 2010 action on this issue in order to hold financial hardship projects harmless in the same manner that all other projects during this state fiscal crisis. We find that these apportionments and future apportionments provided to the financial hardship projects that receive unfunded approvals due to the state's fiscal crisis, while the state has bonding authority, are not contingent on a re-review of the district's available contribution. The provisions of the regulation section 1859.81 regarding a re-review of the available local contribution do not apply to these projects. And the legal rationale for this is, as we know from the motion in February, that we are able to interpret our own regulations through legislative council, and indeed that regulation section 1859.81 is only triggered when the state funds are exhausted, a condition that does not exist today. I know that's a lengthy resolution or motion, but I think this is the third time this is before the board, and we need to be extremely clear.
Excellent motion. Second. Can you call the roll?
Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
Senator Hancock.
Aye.
Senator Huff. Assemblymember Fuller.
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee. Assemblymember Hayashi.
Aye.
Scott Harvey.
No.
Kathleen Moore.
Aye.
Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cynthia Bryant.
I'm abstaining. Bold show of courage.
Motion carries.
All right. So is there another motion on the balance of the list?
Unless there's someone else that would like to. First of all, I just want to say that it's a tremendous day that we can apportion $960 million inclusive of the hardship projects, and compliment our chair and staff in having that before us today.
And the state treasurer.
And the state treasurer. And we hope that these projects move forward and are attributes in their community. I would move approval of staff recommendation number 1 and number 3 for the balance of the list. We just did recommendation number 2 in the prior motion for the remaining projects.
Second. Call the roll.
Senator Lowenthal.
Aye.
Senator Hancock.
Aye.
Senator Huff. Assemblymember Fuller.
Aye.
Assemblymember Brownlee. Assemblymember Hayashi.
Aye.
Scott Harvey.
Aye.
Kathleen Moore.
Aye.
Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cynthia Bryant.
Aye.
Carries.
Thank you. That is really excellent news. Please get your 5005s in quickly and start building your schools. I didn't know. What's the board's pleasure on San Pasquale? Do you want to do that now, or are we going to do that next month, or?
Yeah, we should do it now.
I think we agreed that we would try to resolve San Pasquale in this item by taking it out of order. Reshuffling, I think, is the term we've used based on a health and safety. So tell us, walk us through what options we have. I think you are making a case for one of the projects. I think the district has expanded the list. We probably need to know the pluses and minuses.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because what I wanted to highlight for you is the other 2 projects that are not impacted by the earthquake. One of the projects is a new construction project, San Pasquale Junior High School, and if I restate the number 50-63214-00-001, that project is a Proposition 47 project, and the request would be for $3.1 million. And if you look at page 181, and the balance of Proposition 47, we don't have sufficient funds to cover that project. So there's only $4.1 million balance. Oh, excuse me, restate that. There is funds available. I apologize. There are funds available. There's funds there, and then there is funds available for Proposition 55 for the other project, for the elementary school project, the new construction project. And there are funds available for the Proposition 1D project that was also provided unfunded approval. So there are funds available too.
Would your staff recommendation be to move on all 3 of them, or are you separating them because of the magnitude of the health and safety as opposed to new construction?
Yeah.
I need to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that we would definitely separate the project between the fund source, specifically for the San Pasquale Valley High School project. I mean, it would be our recommendation, because they were impacted at this site, to the will of the board, if whether or not they want to provide them an apportionment today.
How much would that be?
That would be for Proposition 1D for $1.5 million, and it's for the project 57-63214-00-001, in which they received an unfunded approval dated February 2010, which is part of your action in the consent agenda on page 61, tab 4. So that's one part of the motion. And then the other 2 motions is whether or not you want to provide funds for the remaining projects that weren't impacted by the earthquake. And that would be, again, 50-63214-00-001 for San Pasquale Junior High, and that's on your unfunded approval list for November 2009 for $3.1 million, which is the state share for Proposition 47. And the other project, which is also part of your unfunded approvals today for your February 2010, it's Project 50-63214-00-002 for San Pasquale Valley Elementary School for $4.2 million. And it's the will of the board whether or not they want to provide funds for those projects that were not impacted by the earthquake.
Is there a motion? Mr. Huff? Senator.
Just a question on this. So if we move forward with the plans as there, is that going to solve the liquefaction problems? Or are they like starting fresh? I mean, what is it we're being asked to do? I understand we're sort of jumping up to head of the line, and we're doing a preemptive strike as opposed to waiting for an earthquake to come along and shake those down so they are directly impacted. But the question is, does this solve that problem?
I understand from the district, and maybe he could speak to it. I think he shared with us earlier that it's just basically because of the liquefaction issues that they would have to basically, my understanding is demolish those classrooms and start all over again.
And is that what the plan does?
Is that correct? Yeah.
Could I ask a question too?
Sure.
He's coming up, Ms. Bryant. I'm inclined to say we should go for the whole thing because it seems to me that possibly that frees up other district money to do the immediate earthquake stuff, renovations as well. But I don't know that that's the case. In other words, what's the impact on the overall financial ability to repair the facilities? And I'm not crazy about bringing portables and at $21 a mile or something either, if we could just fix it once and for all and keep life simple.
Do you want it?
David Schoeneman, Superintendent, San Pasquale Valley Unified. There was a question?
I think the question is Senator Huff was asking whether or not this solves your liquefaction problem.
Okay, this would. I'm sorry. I got distracted here. I'm kind of lost that classroom ability. This would solve the liquefaction problem for the classrooms that I have noted there. It would do that. But it would not solve the whole district problem. We would have to be looking at other funds because we're going to be maxed out, I believe, as far as our eligibilities are concerned with this particular program. That's what I mean. There's other classrooms and things that would need to be done. So that was my previous request, was to talk with staff about going forward to fix the rest of like the gym and those things that were mentioned by Ms. Moore.
That's a separate project. However, isn't the gym part of the $1.5 million high school project in the modernization that we're deliberating on right now?
It was, but we were looking, I believe, at moving that just to take care of classrooms at the high school, because the 1.5 would not take care of the gym.
But maybe what we ought to do is have you work with staff between now and May, figure out which things address your soil liquefaction and what you figured out, and then we can take an action on that in May if there's no objections to that.
I think that's an excellent idea, Madam Chair. So we know exactly what we're voting on and that we're accomplishing
what we're bumping you up for and
sure.
Why we're doing it. You obviously have a lot of support here, so just staff can, I think you already are down the path of really working all those issues through with them, just make sure we have all the information.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the fact that this is kind of, there's different things that we've talked about with modernization here and new here and a modernization here, but that's kind of the nature of what small hardship districts have to do. I don't think we're necessarily an anomaly when it comes to, putting together funding packages to make things happen when you're a hardship.
Kind of squishy.
I beg your pardon?
Kind of squishy.
Yeah, you shake. The more we shake,
Yeah, that was a bad pun. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to reports, tab 10 is the high performance program update. Just want to say something on this item. I had a slight Are you okay? Yes. Slight miscommunication with with staff and with Senator Hancock about how we were going to handle this item. And it's in a report section of the agenda, which suggests that we may not be able to take action, but it is my desire and it is my commitment to Senator Hancock that we will move this item as far forward as we possibly can and see if we can get consensus and very clear direction so that we can come back in May and be done with this for once and for all. And I think we've had several conversations about it, and so I think that's the desire of the chair, to try to get complete, absolute, final direction to staff so that we have a regulatory package that we can adopt in May and we can get this high-performance program out there and working and get some green schools built before the end of this year. That's my desire. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Brian LePasse with the Office of Public School Construction. Thank you for listening to our report today. At the February meeting, we were asked to convene a work group to examine the reasons why the high performance program hasn't been more successful so far. To date, we've only apportioned about $23 million. Actually, we've given approvals to about $18 million, and we have about 7 more in the pipeline, which we think that we should have been able to apportion more by now. And we're trying to examine exactly what the barriers were. We convened 2 work groups in March, and we had members there from the U.S. Green Building Council. We had architects, school district representatives, Division of State Architect, OPSC, numerous other stakeholders, CASH, CHIPS. And the goal there was to promote easier access to the program and increase participation. And so we looked at the areas that we might focus on, especially for modernization projects, that we could highlight and maybe attach more points to that are in our rating criteria, in an effort to really focus on the types of building components that were more difficult to attain or more costly to attain. And we received a lot of really good feedback, and we took actually proposed regulations to the April Implementation Committee meeting, and they were well received. I think we proposed 21 additional points over all the different categories. 7 of those 21 points were attached to prerequisites that were prerequisites in our criteria, but actually the level that they had to meet for the prerequisites in our criteria were above and beyond existing building code. So we felt that it'd be appropriate to attach points to those. So any project that is to come in from now forward, if we adopt those regulations, would automatically receive a 7-point increase and have the ability to get up to 14 more points if they were able to meet the criteria that we attached more points to in our proposed regulations. An example of this would be if you have a new school project with a base grant of $30 million that attained 34 high-performance rating criteria points previously, they would have, under the existing regulations, gotten a $705,000 high-performance grant. With just the prerequisites alone, with no other points attained other than the prerequisites, they'd move up from 34 to 41 points, and the grant would move up from $705,000 to $1.2 million. And like I said, that doesn't take into consideration them being able to possibly achieve more points through the other augmentations that we are proposing. The other thing we updated, kind of a minor point, was to the 2008 California Energy Code went into effect on January 1st of this year, and so we're augmenting our regulations to reflect that as well. Those are the changes that we had in our regulations. We received a few other proposals from stakeholders, 2 of which are highlighted in the item today. The first one was a joint proposal from CASH and the Collaboration for High Performance Schools, or CHIPS, and it included a 2-tier approach. The first tier would be what was referred to as a starter kit or a starter grant. That would be $150,000 for new construction projects, $250,000 for modernization projects, and in order to receive this starter grant, one of three criteria would have to be met. The first one would have been meeting the minimum threshold for high performance points in order to get a grant, which is 27 points for new construction projects, 20 points for modernization projects. The other two ways to qualify would be being CHIPS verified or LEED certified. So any district meeting any of those three criteria would be awarded that grant. The Tier 2 grant would be, originally it was proposed to double the existing funding formula. So don't change the criteria that we have in the high performance rating criteria at all, just double the funding associated with it. But since then, through our discussions, through the 3 work group meetings we've had and also the implementation committee meeting, CHIPS and Cash have adjusted that proposal to include OPSC's proposed regulation changes as their Tier 2. So their proposal, the way it sits now, is the starter grant plus the changes that OPSC has proposed. Along with those changes, there's been the suggestion that this grant is an incentive grant and not necessarily, it's kind of a unique style type of grant compared to the other ones that we have. And so the proposal is to have no matching share for either the Tier 1 or the Tier 2 grant. So it would be completely state funded without any district matching share. We've received a legal opinion from the SAB's legal counsel that says because these grants are attached to modernization or new construction projects, that there's education code that doesn't provide the flexibility to exclude the matching share from those grants. So it doesn't provide the flexibility for us to give the grants without there being a matching share, is basically what that boils down to. The other proposal that we received was from San Bernardino City Unified School District, and it wasn't necessarily a holistic approach to the program. It was more of a suggestion on ways to improve the program. And it was they had 3 suggestions. The first one was to find a way to establish a separate non-pupil grant-based eligibility system for high-performance grants, which would effectively separate it from modernization or new construction projects, making it kind of a standalone grant. The other thing they were asking us to do is try to find a way to align the high-performance grants with actual costs of the building components that are being integrated as part of the green design. And the third thing they asked for was to possibly apportion the high-performance grants on a preliminary basis, much like the way the career tech or overcrowding relief grants are currently handled. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about those suggestions at our meetings. It really seemed to focus on the CHIPS proposal, but we thought that we'd mention them today just for your consideration. Our next steps that we have in mind after today are to take your input, develop revised regulations for the May Implementation Committee, and then bring those to the May SAB meeting for approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Is there any, I was going to see if there's public comment on this item, because it might help inform Ms. Senator Hancock's comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Tom Duffy again for Cash. I don't think I can do better than what Mr. Brian LePass just told you about the proposal. We brought together a number of stakeholders several times and met with OPSC as well, as noted. And the proposal really did come from involving CHIPS and architects and engineers and school folks. We think that the starter incentive is important because of the amount of money that's spent on planning, along with the hard cost in projects. So we think it makes sense to do this. This program, especially for modernization, has not been an attractive program. So we think that the starter incentive is really an incentive. We propose less for new construction, as Brian noted, and the reason for that is that the modernization program is really woefully underfunded compared to new construction. You've heard us talk about new construction before, and I won't go into that, but we believe that this starter incentive plus utilizing what OPSC has proposed would really make for a viable program, a lively program. And so we'd urge your consideration of that.
Is the CHIPS cash proposal on the starter incentive only in the modernization arena?
No, it proposed $250,000 for modernization, $150,000 for new construction.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Quick follow-up on that. What were those dollars based on? How did you arrive at those amounts of money?
We have listened to the architects and districts that have attempted to move toward greening their projects, and we have information I could share it with you that identifies in planning costs, Mr. Harvey, that substantial funds beyond $100,000, $150,000, close to $200,000 may be spent simply doing the planning and the commissioning for those projects. As you're aware, on the regular program for new construction modernization, the pupil grants are utilized for planning cost as well as hard cost. Well, that same thing is realized and recognized by the practitioners for getting to high performance. You have to plan carefully, and part of that planning is the commissioning. And at the other end of the project, once it's done, the commissioning part of it makes sure that the systems that were planned are working effectively so that the goals, such as energy savings, are going to be realized.
Let me ask you this. I think inherent in what you've just said is you do endorse the OPSC recommendation to shake up the points. I mean, that's a given. I think the policy question for us is the starter grant, what it should be if we have one, and then the more dicey one perhaps is, if we do it, does it require a local match per the education code? Is that a fair summary of what's before us?
I believe that it is. That our proposal was to identify this as an incentive to say, this is important. It's important to the legislature and to the administration. And so we'll incentivize you by offering this starter, taking OPSC's point change on top of that. And then not requiring the match, and that's so you've stated what our proposal has been.
I guess I'm really wrestling with the fact that the points give districts more money, the incentive gives them more money. I certainly want to get the money out the door. We want this program to be utilized for all the public policy reasons we've heard. You avoid costs going forward because your energy bills are going to be less. It's a healthier environment. Less absenteeism, student scores are up. I mean, it's the right thing to do. I'm just really wrestling. I will love to hear from Senator Hancock and others on the dollar amount for the incentive. I still have not seen a lot of empirical evidence that suggests that $250 is necessary from the one category of modernization and $150 on new construction. I don't think I've seen that, and that's what I'm wrestling with, is the magnitude of the incentive.
And I recognize that we don't have data from many projects at all in this program, but in bringing together, again, practitioners that are in the field and working at this and have planned, they're telling us that large dollars are spent on the front side in planning, and then you also need them on the construction side for the hard construction cost.
If I may, Ms. Kaplan or Ms. Silverman, do either one of you have any comment on the issue of the amount, how it was arrived at, the validity of it?
And I think Lisa obviously has had dialogue with others in CHIPS as far as trying to get a basis of that $250. Obviously we want to have a good program and good outcomes, but yeah, it would be helpful to get a better understanding of the incentive amount. What would be that base? I know we've had other dialogues about what's a fair base. I mean, it would be helpful if we get that information before we establish what that base is. I think it's a fair approach.
What I ended up sending an email to the board, which I hope that you have, is something that I got from a cash board member who's also on the implementation committee and done a fair amount of green building, Bill Savage. He did give data. Unfortunately, I did receive it late yesterday and have not completely looked through that. I've talked to a couple of districts, and the information I get is conflicting because it depends on whether it's an entire project they're modernizing or just a small portion of it. The one thing that is consistent that I hear is, yes, it does take a fair amount of time to apply and go through the HPI process, and there is a general consensus of anywhere between 3% and 6% of the design costs, that there is an increase up front when you want to do a high-performance incentive grant. The one thing that I did learn from Chips and Bill Orr was that a lot of the 250 that they based it on were grants that were given at the Energy Commission and the Integrated Waste Management Board for high-performance schools. So that's where they came up with kind of a thought. But I don't have any more data on me other than that and what some districts have indicated to me.
Well, do you think that one of the ways we could look at this, though, is that the $100 million in and of itself that was in the original Bond Act was really about providing an incentive to districts to get them to try to do this. And part of, I think, we are all speaking for Senator Hancock, but I think we'll hear her say that she wants the data when we're done with this. And I think I share that view with her. And that perhaps maybe 150, 250, 225, 240, whatever it is, maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe we're somewhat throwing spaghetti on the wall, because what we're really going to find out is we're going to get the data and we're going to find out what motivates districts to build green, to put these high performance attributes in their schools. So maybe we've been stressing out over it for maybe it's not for no real reason. I'm kind of sort of landing there myself at this point.
I think as we know, there's no real data on this. There has been a report. As a school board member myself at Natomas Unified, one of the questions this board asked is what's going to motivate a change in behavior so that we start building green schools. I know with my school district, this grant didn't need to exist. The board did decide, hey, we're going to go through and build green no matter what because we know the benefits of it. However, I do know there are districts that probably, if we did provide a grant, would be more likely to build green, and that's where it truly is the board's pleasure of, I will help direct the implementation committee and come back with regulations as to whatever incentive or grant amount that the board directs me to do.
Ms. Silverman.
Well, I think it's important to note that, if you do build an incentive grant to the program, you obviously have to be able to ensure that the money set aside for the incentive to build green is spent on green only. I mean, that should be true to and have full accountability for those monies for that purpose. And, so if you do decide to go that route, you have to ensure that you are going to build for green components and not provide an off track to do other things on your project.
Right. Do you have...
Yes, Madam Chair, members, Rob Samish is with us. He is from Lionakis Beaumont. He's an architect, and he was part of our stakeholder group, and he could talk more effectively, Mr. Harvey, to the nature of the costs.
Thank you. I'm also a member of the board of directors for CHIPS. I'd like to speak about the districts that have not gotten to the grant level, that sort of have passed under the radar. And the reason is a lot of those districts wanting to do modernizations come to our office, and I can think of 6 projects in the last 3 years that did not apply for the HPI funds. And the reason was simple. If you went through the point system, they'd maybe get somewhere between $9,000 and $25,000, and so it wasn't even worth the effort at all. That's one of the reasons why an eye-popping $250,000 grant was conceived of in the first place. The other thing is that one of the things that I've been doing for CHIPS is investigating the post-occupancy studies that have come out, and a lot of them have come out in 2009 because all the schools have been built. And there isn't much modernization data on green. There isn't much in the nation. There's very few for any kind of buildings, not just schools. So trying to calculate how much $250,000 gets you on a modernization, not on new construction, is very difficult. No one's done it. And as Lisa said, part of the $250,000 is it feels right. It's been done before by the Energy Commission. I was the project manager for one of those projects that had the $250,000 grant, and I watched the culture change of a district that realized that they need to commission, they need to have the project actually work, not just throw in green components and then not be able to operate them and not save energy. That doesn't do any good. And that's why the holistic approach of commissioning and a CHIPS or a LEED design makes so much sense. You can't piecemeal it. It has to be a holistic thing. We like the proposal that there's a board resolution from the district to show leadership. This is an incentive grant, and so that's part of it. That can be part of it as well. Specifically, though, the way we see the $250,000 being spent is upfront energy studies, the cost of commissioning itself. Acoustics is a prerequisite for modernization. It's very difficult to do on modernization projects because you already have an existing building. It's not new, and you have just difficult acoustics projects, and that raises the cost. I went through and looked at a variety of projects. We have two CHIPS projects going through our office right now, and just came up with numbers on a very simple modernization, about $4 million in construction cost. And when I added up those numbers, high-efficiency HVAC, commissioning, upgrading the insulation, acoustics, the controls for daylighting, window upgrades so that the daylighting works and you save energy, that came out to $260,000. Now, that was an amalgam. It was sort of taking a variety of different projects, but it gave you an order of magnitude. And the reason that the points haven't worked on our project, if we doubled the points on all the 6 projects that I mentioned that didn't get to the threshold, we would get $18,000 and $36,000. If we use it doesn't matter how you change the points. It never reaches the level that any of our districts want to go ahead, and that's the reason for the 250.
Okay.
The one other piece is that the other part was having LEED or CHIPS be an alternative, and that is for some of our districts that have already decided to go with LEED or CHIPS. We have a binder that's 4 inches of effort for the DSA submittal, and we have another binder that's 4 inches and hundreds of hours for the CHIPS. And so why do both? If you're going to do CHIPS, let's submit it to DSA. It's the same program. It's the same points.
Okay. Any questions for him? Additional public comment?
Anna Ferrer with the County School Facilities Consortium. As you know, county offices often are in financial hardship, so I'm going to wave my financial hardship banner again and say, an incentive grant that would provide funding at the front end for planning and design and those types of issues for those of us in county offices who very much want to build green, but maybe confined to not being able to do that because of the constraints with financial hardship. We would certainly appreciate an examination of how financial hardship projects are impacted under either one of these alternatives.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Brian?
Just a quick point of reference for the board I wanted to mention on the heels of Mr. Samish's comments. Part of the augments to the regulations that we did took commissioning and acoustics into consideration. We actually added 2 points to the enhanced commission. Actually, I take that back. It's 4 points to the enhanced commissioning criteria, as well as attaching 2 points to the acoustics prerequisite. And then in subsequent conversations at the third work group meeting, because at the implementation committee meeting there was a lot of concerns raised about the acoustics and the requirements for meeting the acoustical requirements. We talked even about eliminating that prerequisite altogether and almost everybody in attendance seemed to think that that would be kind of a bad move, that it would compromise the greening of the buildings that are being constructed or modernized. And so we, at our next proposal, we're actually planning on providing a couple more points to the acoustics to make it the prerequisite worth 4 points instead of 2.
Okay, Senator Hancock?
Fine.
I know.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Yeah, I very much appreciate the staff report and all the hard work that the members of the implementation committee and that our chair, Ms. Bryan, and others, OPSC, put into this work. I would like to recommend to the board today that we direct staff to return in May with regulations for us to vote on once and for all, and that they would be as follows: that we adopt the point revisions and the suggestions of OPSC, coupled with a $250,000 starter grant as an investment in data collection for the state and an incentive for school district participation. I think we've heard that this would help districts cover the upfront costs associated with the collaborations necessary for planning more complicated designs, and that would also offset some of the hard costs associated with the more sophisticated energy efficiency equipment and energy efficiency systems. We've had, I think, so few applications, in part because the process is new for school districts, and given everything else they're dealing with every day, it takes momentum and commitment at the local level to engage in design and planning for high-performance schools. Now, California has the opportunity to be an absolute trailblazer in using high-performance standards in modernization projects as opposed to new projects. So we want school districts to make the commitment to build and modernize high-performance schools. And what we will get by doing this with the money in our $100 million pot, which is now like $70 million, is a real data on the differential costs and what the real costs associated with design, planning, and construction and materials are. Right now, we only have 14 modernization projects. We would have several hundred at least if we go forward with this proposal. And that will be, I think, very useful to the Department of Finance and other groups as we consider any future school bonds. So I just, again, want to thank OPSC and everybody for doing this work, and move that we direct staff to come back with these regulations.
Senator Lowenthal?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Hancock. I'm fully supportive, but I just need to understand, we've had this discussion before about the differences between incentive grant for modernization and also for new construction. We want to incentivize, I hear, modernization, which we've had few grants. You in your proposal did not mention any difference. I just want to make sure I understand. Do you want the $250 to come back with a $250,000 incentive grant for both modernization and new construction, or what Cash has said, $250 and
Well, I
$150?
appreciate what Cash says. I would actually prefer the $250,000 for both, because the money has to be used for things on the OPSC point list. And there will be verification of that afterwards. And I think the hard costs will, in fact, use up anything that's left over from the design costs. But I would be open to modifying that when the regulations come back if the Department of the State Architect, DSA, is able to give us better data about the costs that they've seen in the 14 projects that we have or any of the Energy Commission projects or the integrated waste management projects. They may have that data, and if they can give it to us, we could modify that absolute number.
I'd like to make a motion. This as a motion.
Okay.
I think we have it. Does anyone object to this?
There was a motion in a second.
And any objection to directing staff as?
Fine.
Yeah.
I have a question that
Senator Huff.
could fall into that nature. So I understand currently Ed Code does not allow grants without a matching fund.
That's right.
So my presumption is then that there is legislation working its way through our will that will allow that?
No, it's in the in our regulations that our regulations say that it requires a match. I think it's one of the issues we have to work through, but the question is what the Ed Code provision here, we're not sure, I think is the best way to put it. It's going to have to be clarified in this process, but it says incentive grant, which to me implies it's not required, doesn't require a match. Our regulations currently do, but we're revising our regulations in this process. That is what this is about, so we can change our regulations.
Okay.
Right.
I got you.
Just a clarification, Madam Chair. Part of the difficulty is the Education Code sets forth the new construction projects, the new construction program, and the modernization program. Both of those programs are strictly a matching program. Although I understand and acknowledge the fact that the term incentive grant was used in the legislation, the difficulty is we really don't have anything currently that is a non-matching program in either modernization or new construction, which is what causes the potential legal issue.
Right.
We'll analyze it.
We're going to push through
And
exactly the way.
I would just throw out as a final part of my comment that I'm not fully convinced that we shouldn't have a matching component here. I'm not sure what that looks and feels like, but I'm just a little uncomfortable with just a full-blown grant. Maybe it's based on the size of a project and that constitutes part of the match, however you want to do it. But, I'm a little uncomfortable with the way it is right now. I don't mind pursuing it for, refinement and sake of discussion, figure out the final up-down vote.
Okay, well, I think it's going to I think it'll have to be discussed in May. I mean, I think I agree with, I'm where the senator is on this to try to do this. It clearly says incentive grant. The program isn't being used right now. We know that, we're never going to have success in this high performance area if we don't get some results. And so I'm willing to push the envelope, but we also have bondholder, and we have to make sure that we have all of our bases covered. But
Madam Chair, one other clarification. This item unfortunately is on for as a report item, not an action item.
We're giving direction.
Right, we're giving strong direction.
Rather than a motion.
I hear unanimous consensus from the dais on Senator Hancock. Well, with the issue that Senator Huff raised. So I think we have really clear direction, and I will help the staff work get it back here. And thank you, Brian. I've heard nothing in all of my conversations on this issue. Everyone is very complimentary of you and your team and the work you did on this. So thank you.
If I may.
Yes, Mr. Harvey.
Just one final comment on the grant amount. I mean, I think that is going to be a very important discussion, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of look at it, because we also heard that depending on the nature of the modernization project, sometimes they're small little projects, sometimes it's the complete modernization, and I would be uncomfortable having a blanket for something that's very small. So I'm looking forward to hearing.
I agree with you, and I think one of the reasons that I kept the 250 is that we want to encourage schools not just to put solar panels on the roof. We want them to look at the whole school, how the school is insulated, how the air, all of the different parts of it, and that if we do that, it will really encourage them to move forward with bigger bigger, more holistic projects than small.
I'm with you there, and I look forward to the discussion.
Great.
Just a point of clarification. So in May, when we come back, we'll come back with regulations, and where there seems to be areas where it's unclear, we'll come back with language that would allow the board to option based on their direction. So there would be regulatory language with that.
Because when we finish this meeting in May, we will be done with this issue, and it will be done. And we will have them done.
Right. Looking into when you say things like that, Ms. Kaplan, people get very nervous looking. Right. I think what the board would like, with the permission of the chair, because we talked about it, is we want regulations. We will, of course, look at any additional data we can get, and I'm particularly interested in the Office of the State Architect coming and giving us any data they have on actual costs as they've been able to track them. However, we want regulations.
Right.
And let me be clear. No. Regulation changes, but also taking into consideration, Senator Huff, if there's other options, language in regulation, whatever the board decides, it will be in regulatory language for that board to vote on.
If for some reason we need to have an option, it is going to be in language that we have the exact language in front of us and we're not writing from the dais. It's done. We pick option A or option B if we have to do that. But hopefully the direction from the senator was really clear and we can get one regulatory package.
And if I may, the summary of that is OPSC's recommendations, the $250,000 grant amount, that's the basis from which we begin on in May, correct?
Correct. Okay. We have at least one item open, which is the minutes, and we need to get another vote on it because we're short right now. So you want to call the roll on the minutes?
This is to approve February and March minutes. Senator Hancock?
Aye.
And Assemblymember Brownlee?
Aye.
Carries.
Okay. And if is there any public comment on any item we didn't take up? Okay, then. The next SAB meeting is May 26th, and the meeting time and other important meeting details will become available through our public notice process. I want to say thank you to the Senate Rules Committee for letting us back into the John Burton hearing room, and the Senate sergeants for having the doors open for our public access. And with that, we are adjourned.